Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for coming out today to join us for our workshop/council meeting. We will call the meeting to order with Councilwoman Cobb being on Zoom. We will have invocation, and we will have the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Sagara. Would you please stand with us? Please pray in your own faith. Most gracious Father, we thank you once again for your many blessings. Thank you for our nation, our first responders, our military, our state, and also the city leadership. Bless our citizens, bless the city staff, and give us the wisdom and knowledge as we make decisions concerning the welfare of our people that we serve. Give us that knowledge to make the right decision for all concerned. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Councilmember Sagara. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councilmember Adams.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda.
Councilmember Ford.
Second.
All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Councilmember Cobb. Yes, okay. Motion carries 7-0. Prudence to the Texas Open Meeting Law, Government Code 551.001. The mayor now calls a closed meeting of the City Council on the third day of September 2024, 3:02 p.m. Under the following authority, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, the City Council will consult with legal counsel regarding pending litigations. Agenda item DS-24-056. The council will now go into closed session. Councilwoman Cobb on Zoom. Shields, thank you. Thank you all for your patience. We're calling our meeting back to order at 4:32. We will now go into our work session. We will discuss agenda items 1 through 8 and 12 through 16 for September 3rd, 2024 regular session. And there will be no final actions until regular session. Madam Secretary.
Hillman 24021, consider minutes of regular city council meeting of August 6th, 2024.
Madam Secretary.
RS 24138, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing the award of bid number 2443 interior wall renovations for KCCC Ballroom to NMCB Incorporated in the amount of $112,003.31.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. McNair.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council.
May I introduce Amanda Wilkinson, who is the Director of K3C, if there's questions for the presentation we have? She's
Good
here.
afternoon, Amanda.
So the Killeen Civic and Conference Center began operations in 2002. Ballrooms A, B, and C currently have the original wallpaper, which when we do the math is 22 years old. The walls have sustained damages from use by patrons and vendors and just, normal wear and tear of being there for so long, over 2 decades. In several areas, the wallpaper is peeling or parts are no longer adhering to the wall surfaces and the paper is no longer manufactured and replacement pieces cannot be found. Staff at the K3C actually have been going up to higher parts of the wall to cut pieces that they can bring down lower for aesthetic. The current condition of the wallpaper is unappealing and there are visible damages for all to see. The next 3 slides just show examples of the current condition of the scratches, tears, and rips in the wallpaper. So K3C staff, specifically Mrs. Wilkinson, submitted an RFP and received 4 bids. Bids included removing the existing wallpaper, replastering areas damaged during the wallpaper removal, and preparing the walls for painting, then following up with the paint of the ballroom and walls and trim. Newly textured walls in the ballroom will provide a modern and inviting look that will appeal to any client and supplement the recent upgrades to the facility, which includes carpeting, doors for the ballroom, some new flooring in the entryway, and now we have started the HVAC work as well. This is a list of the bids, the lowest being from NMCB Inc. for $112,003.31. And this is our proposed project schedule. We can start as soon as next week on this, and Mrs. Wilkinson and her team are working to schedule around these dates so we do not lose any business and we can continue operations as uninterrupted as possible. And we are recommending that the council authorize the city manager or his designee to execute a contract with NMCB in an amount not to exceed $112,003.31 for the removal and the preparation and painting of the ballroom walls at the Killeen Civic and Conference Center. So we are available for questions.
Thank you. There are no questions.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary.
RS 24-153, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement with Central County Services for a mental health co-responder program.
Thank you. Chief Lopez, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. I'm excited to present this initiative. It's going to be great for citizens of Killeen. All right, the Mental Health Co-Responder Program, and the question is, what is it? And it's a collaboration between the Killeen Police Department and Central County Services to integrate a qualified mental health professional into routine police operations dealing with mental health concerns. Utilizing this model, KPD and mental health clinicians respond to mental health calls for service together, not independent of each other. By responding together, we can provide an improved and immediate response to crisis situations by conducting a more accurate needs assessments on scene for the person in distress and connecting them and their families to community-based resources. How does it work? A qualified mental health professional is stationed within the police department with access to radio communications and responds alongside with officers when the situation is considered safe. And I got to clarify that we're not going to allow a civilian to enter a hot scene with the potential for danger. They're going to come to the scene when we deem it safe, and they're going to provide the resources they're supposed to do. Key components of this program is collaboration with mental health professionals, crisis intervention, diversion from the jail. Instead of taking them to jail, we have a possibility of getting them the help they actually need and not put them in jail. And the biggest component is follow-up services, something that the police department can't provide. Mental health professionals can provide that. The benefits, I'm not going to read all the slides, but the big benefits is that improve outcomes by addressing mental health needs directly. The program leads to better outcomes for individuals in crisis with fewer incidents of force and better access to mental health care. Reduction in repeat calls. We all know we have the repeat callers due to their condition. They always call the police for the slightest things. Once we get this in place, the mental health professionals will be able to help reduce those calls for service and enhances community relations. The program fosters better relationships between the police department and community by demonstrating a commitment to compassionate, effective policing. And our recommendation is that the City Council endorse the memorandum of understanding between Central County Services and the Killeen Police Department for the implementation of the mental health co-responder program. If I could go back one slide, you see the last slide, that's the best thing about it. There's no cost to the City of Killeen, as Central County Services will handle the administration, implementation of the grant requirements. So it's a win-win for Killeen. That's our recommendation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief, you and your staff for providing this needed resource for our community. There are Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Chief. Very much appreciate this initiative, which couples an officer with a qualified mental health professional to respond to a mental health crisis. I know the council determined to prioritize mental health support close to every opportunity we've gotten since 2021. So this is good to see this opportunity here. I did notice the City of Temple's Police Department has been running this program for 2 years.
Yes,
what expectations might our community have for the first 2 years of implementation?
When speaking to Chief Reynolds, he said they had a lot of great results. All the repeat offenders that they have are getting the required services they need, so it reduces the load to the city, to the police department and the city and other mental health professionals. So it's been a great program. I have positive results. I haven't seen any statistics exactly from them, but when speaking to Chief Reynolds, he said it's been a great benefit to the department and mostly to the residents of Temple and now the residents of Killeen if it gets approved.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chief, for this information. I think it's going to prove very useful. To your point, I think that it's been, these programs have been successful in other areas. Can you explain, though, how the tracking or what metrics we use to measure, to track a report, to see how effective this program actually is for our citizens?
That's part of the grant requirements for Central County Services. Once they get the data together, I'll be happy to provide you a report once they put the data together. But realize it's going to take about 18 months to 2 years to get all the data to put a report together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Secretary.
RS 24-154, consider a memorandum resolution approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee and Atmos Energy regarding the 2024 Atmos Rate Review Mechanism filing.
Madam City Attorney. Good afternoon.
Turn my microphone on. All right, this is the Atmos RRM filing item. So a little bit of background. Cities exercise original jurisdiction over the levels of gas rates charged within their boundaries. Killeen is a member of the Atmos Cities Steering Committee, along with 181 other cities served by Atmos Midtex. Since 2007, Atmos and the Steering Committee have worked under an alternate rate review process referred to as the Rate Review Mechanism, or RRM, as opposed to the Statutory Gas Reliability Infrastructure Program. And Atmos filed a rate request on April 1st of this year, claiming it is entitled to additional system-wide revenues of $196.8 million, and that's based on the test year ending December 31st, 2023. The steering committee consultants analyzed the filing, determined that the system-wide efficiency under the rate review mechanism should be $149.6 million. So the steering committee and Atmos negotiated a settlement. The Atmos request was reduced from $196.8 million to $164.7 million, and that means that the average residential increase will be $5.52 per month, 6.84% increase, and the average commercial usage increase is $13.39 per month, or 3.44%. The recommendation, staff and the committee, the executive committee of the steering committee recommend approving the negotiated settlement regarding the 2024 rate review mechanism filing. Also, I believe that there is a representative here from Atmos tonight if you have any questions for them.
Thank you. There are no questions. Madam Secretary.
RS 24-155, consider a memorandum resolution awarding bid number 2437, sidewalk and ADA ramp improvements to Jordan Enterprises LP in the amount of $526,786.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Revelle. This is some good news. How are you?
Absolutely, I'm doing well. And to the
Good.
Mayor Pro Tem and the City Council, as the Mayor said, this is the sidewalk improvement project. This project objective is to deal with sidewalk gaps across the city, specifically dealing with pedestrian safety as well as around schools. As noted on the slide, in terms of background, it was a part of the 2023 Capital Improvement Program. We've identified 10 project locations across the city. As I mentioned, we have a total of about 18 so far. That's a living list. We have a total of 18. We've identified 10 that we were able to move forward with as a part of this bid. As a part of this, as we mentioned, there would be sidewalk gap improvements, ADA improvements, and then any where we need to do crosswalk striping and things of that nature that would be included in this effort as well. There is funding available through the ARPA funds, about $490,000, 230-something thousand available through the Child Safety Fund for a total of about $730,000 available as a part of this first round. These 10 project locations, I will not name each one of them, but I do want to take time to speak to the process that went into the selection for these 10 locations.
Thank you.
The first part is we looked at cost. How do we make sure we understand that across the city, as I mentioned, we've got 18 to 20 locations, $3 million worth of need, but we only got $720,000 or $727,000. How do we make sure that we get the best bang for our buck? And so we identified locations where the cost was not relatively high, but relatively low, so to speak. So there were no significant right-of-way costs, no significant utility conflict costs, no significant engineering design costs or surveying costs. We looked at sites that would allow us to, we would be able to advance that didn't have those costs. So that's the first thing. The second thing, we looked at complexity, and to some extent that's related to costs. If it required quite a bit of design, if it required coordinating with the TxDOT or Texas Department of Transportation, or coordinating with other partners like utility partners, all of that would add to time and costs. And so we looked at those projects that didn't have those complexities. In addition, we also looked at closeness, those sidewalk gaps that were close to schools. We thought that that was the most important thing, is how close to school, around school, on school property. We thought that we should fill in those gaps first. And then the last thing we looked at was requests from the school, requests from council, requests from citizens. And as a result, these 10 locations were identified as something that we should move forward with. Our team, our internal team, actually put together the documents necessary, so we did not have to use outside help with this, and so that was helpful as well to keep this moving along and to keep costs down. The city, as I mentioned, the city provided those services. We bidded the project on July the 23rd of this year, and as you can see, we received 4 bids back, with the lowest responsive bidder being Jordan Enterprises for $526,786. Staff is recommending approval of this project at the appropriate time, and then authorizing the city manager to enter into the agreement, as well as to execute any change orders that may be necessary as allowed by state law. I myself am here, as well as Mr. Andrew Sagers, who serves as our city engineer, to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Revelle.
Good evening, sir.
$526,780. This goes to show the sidewalk and ADA ramp improvements are expensive. Gratefully, we're able to designate some of the ARPA funding to get some of these projects moving forward. I did want to ask if you could speak to the total square yards of sidewalks and ramp projects that will be completed with this funding.
Now, total square yard, I'm going to leave for the city engineer, but I can tell you that the linear footage would be about 3,000 linear feet of sidewalk that would be installed, and about 105 curb ramps that would be installed to deal with ADA compliance issues. Now, but if you want the yardage, I don't have that on.
The linear feet is just fine.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. It goes to show that it's substantial. You know, a lot of residents believe sidewalks and crosswalks, those projects are quick, easy, and cheap projects. However, this is just not the case. Like road projects, they require planning, they require engineering, some cases right-of-way acquisitions, and they also have to be prioritized,
Yes,
like
sir.
was done here. What we're discussing here today are proposed sidewalks and ramp projects related to schools, access and safety as a priority. My question in relation to my district, just real quick, I noticed you have listed Live Oak Ridge Middle School as well as Aduma Elementary. Can you speak quickly to the scope of those projects?
So Aduma Elementary, really, we're doing a lot of ADA compliance. So there are a number of ADA ramps that will be installed there that meets the to-date ADA standards.
Okay.
So mostly Aduma is going to be focused on that. And then you said Live Oak Ridge?
Yes, sir.
There's a similar effort happening there. Specifically, we're removing 12 curb ramps, adding 24 directional curb ramps to meet ADA compliance. And then we're also doing almost 300 linear feet of sidewalk replacement.
Okay, is that sidewalk along Robinette?
The sidewalk,
It might be a perpendicular street. I'm thinking about it now. It's likely not Robinette.
give me 1 second. Like, if I can see this with my glasses, I'll tell you.
And bear with me, everyone. I'm only asking.
Yes,
We don't have it
Robinette.
with me.
Yes, sir. That's along
Outstanding. Okay, last question I have from you. I know I spoke previously about Willow Springs Elementary School. Is that in the top 18 potentially?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's in the top 18. On that particular one, we did look at that as well as the other ones that didn't make this first list.
Sure.
It's got a number of things that we've got to address. There's a drainage analysis that's going to have to be done, and there's also coordination with TxDOT that will have to be done, but it is on the list. Yes, sir.
Very good, because I know I've been working on this for quite a while now. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rivera, I have two questions. The first question, out of the 8 that's left, the funding, for future funding, have the city came up with how we're going to fund those 8?
Well, you know, we have the funding identified for what we have now. There isn't a specific funding plan that we
Mechanism.
have right now. We do know that we get yearly funding associated with the Child Safety Fund, so there is some money that will be there. Beyond that, there'll most likely be a need for capital project.
Okay. Well, thank you and your team, but as you know, any school that's got a sidewalk gap, regardless of where it's located in
Yes, ma'am.
Killeen, maybe in the future will be added to that. So
Yes, ma'am.
maybe we need to look at other resources to ensure the safety of all our young people throughout the city.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Madam Secretary.
RS 24-156. Consider a memorandum resolution approving change order number 4 to the Taxiway B rehabilitation contract with TTG Utilities Incorporated, resulting in a reduction of $275,480.17.
Good afternoon, Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The item I have for you tonight is a change order for the TTG on the Taxiway B rehabilitation project. Just a little bit of background. On August 23rd, 2022, council awarded the contract to TTG Utilities for the Taxiway B rehab project at the regional airport. This project was to ensure a safe operating environment for airport users and promote long-term economic sustainability of the airport by reducing maintenance costs and extending the taxiway's useful life. Construction is now complete. TTG Utilities has reconciled and adjusted all quantities to match what was actually put into the project. This change order number 4 addresses this reconciliation and reduction of the final project quantities, resulting in a decrease of $275,488.17, which represents a 2.68% reduction in the overall contract. Of course, this project was funded with airport improvement grant proceeds, FA grants, and National Facility Charge funds. There was no impact to the airport operating fund or balance. The recommendation from staff is for the city council to authorize the city manager to execute change order number 4 for the Taxiway B rehab project with TTG Utilities, and reducing the contract amount by $275,488.17. Basically, this was over a $10 million project that we brought in under budget.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. You and your team does a great job at the airport. So thank you for everything y'all do. And Council, Mr. Wilson have the next 2 items. Madam Secretary.
RS 24157, consider a memorandum resolution awarding bid number 2409 to Synergy Commercial Construction for the new general aviation terminal building at Skylark Field Airport in the amount of $4,121,266.45.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes, ma'am. Just a little bit of background. The City Council approved a city ordinance authorizing the issuance of certificate of obligation funds for bonds for certain projects. One of the authorized projects was the construction of a new FBO building at Skylark Field. This project will replace and relocate the outdated 60-year-old terminal. The new terminal will feature solar integration, energy-efficient windows and doors, modern infrastructure. This will reduce the utility and maintenance costs and improve the passenger facility and safety and experience. The city also applied for and received FAA airport terminal grants, ATP grant, and an FAA infrastructure grant, and a Texas Department of Transportation terminal program grant for the construction of this project. The construction phase of this project will be funded through a combination of funding from the grants I just mentioned, the ATP, the FAA's AIG, and the TxDOT, and the bond fund. That's a lot of alphabets, a lot of letters, but it's a lot of funding that we received. There's no impact to the operational fund or fund balance. And since Skylark Field is a general aviation airport, it falls under the FAA's state block grant program. As such, the TxDOT Aviation Division will be administrating the grants on behalf of the FAA. A little bit of discussion. Advertising began on May 6, 24. We advertised in a local newspaper, city website, multiple statewide electronic bidding sites. We held a pre-bid meeting on June 4th, 2024, with 7 general contractors and 3 subs. The recommended bid includes base bid A, which is the general aviation terminal building itself and finish out, the site improvements, west terminal apron improvements, east terminal apron improvements, wayfinding signage, and solar improvements. We received 3 bids. MW Builders, Synergy Commercial, and Valcor Enterprises. You see the bids there. A thorough review of each bid package was completed by the airport's consultant and our staff, and the lowest responsive bidder was Synergy Commercial Construction, with a submitted bid total of $4,121,266.45. The bid submitted by Synergy Commercial Construction meets all the bid requirements and is the best value for the city of Killeen and Skylark Field. When we looked at the bids, you'll notice there's quite a bit of discrepancy between the low bidder and the other 2 bidders, and normally that would raise red flags, but we did a very thorough review, both staff and our consultants, of the bid tabs, and the consultant also had several conversations with the contractor, and we feel very confident that This bid represents everything that's in the specs, and this company is out of Georgetown and has a good reputation, and we feel like they'll do a good job for the city of Killeen and the airport. So our recommendation is for the city council to award the construction contract to Synergy Commercial Construction in the amount of $4,121,266.45 for the construction of the new GA Terminal Skylark building at Skylark Field, and authorize the city manager or his designee to execute all contract documents and change orders or actions within the amount set by state and local law. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Wilson. Very excited. This is a big deal for our city. This is a very nice facility. Unfortunately, we don't have images at this point. This will be our fixed base operating facility, which meets a relevant need in our community, similar to the new Fleet Services building and evidence storage building and parks maintenance facility that will be coming in the future. The existing terminal is outdated. It's very worn, been out there. And Mr. Wilson, you and your team have been successful in attracting these grants so that we can get to have an adequate facility for our aviation and business clientele. So I do want to say thank you for that and looking forward to this one.
Yes, sir. And I'd just like to add, if I may, the regional airport gets all the publicity, but Skylark Field's a very important asset to this community and this city. Just a few little fun facts, if you've got a moment. In 2024, our average monthly operations just average over about 1,500 a month. And this summer, we've averaged between 1,900 and 2,400. We had over 2,400 operations in August. And these are verified trackings that we do with our software that we have. So that's 12,450 operations so far this year. When you compare that to regional at only 2,600 operations, you can tell that there's a lot of activity that goes on at Skylark Field. There's 5 businesses that operate there with 26 people. 3 of them are city employees that do the fuel sales. We manage 48 hangars with over 64 aircraft. There's 4 commercial businesses there. Central Texas College's flight school operates with 15 employees, 15 aircraft, 2 flight simulators, and since 2022, they have issued over 52 pilot certificates. So, they're providing pilots for the pilot shortage that this country's facing, and so the city of Killeen's Skylark Field is playing a part in that. Of course, then we have Freedom Air with 3 employees, Diamond Star Aviation with 1, and Skydive Killeen with 7 pilots. So you can see that Skylark Field is very, very active, but this new terminal, as well as the investments from the lease that we've got with the investors that's looking at building commercial hangars next door to it, is the next step in taking Skylark Field from where it's at now, which is a very good airport, to where it needs to be.
Outstanding. Aviation Department doing outstanding, great updates, a lot of progress at both airports. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wilson, for that presentation. You mentioned during your presentation that the building was about 60 years old. Is that correct?
The old cinder block building that we use, we don't have exact records, but we believe it's at least 60 years old.
Gotcha. You know roughly what the square footage of the old facility was?
About 900 square feet.
900, okay.
And the new building will be just over 3,000 square feet.
3,000, okay, all right. That's a good upgrade. Thank you again, Mr. Wilson.
And like Councilman Boyd stated, it will be a state-of-the-art building, and it'll be something that the community can be proud of.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyd. Councilmember Alvarez. The city of Killeen is on the rise. Madam Secretary.
RS 24-158, consider a memorandum resolution approving a professional services agreement with Garver LLC for the construction phase of the new General Aviation Terminal building at Skylark Field Airport in the amount of $482,500.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Wilson, your last item.
Yes, ma'am. This is a companion item to the one I just briefed. So the first couple of slides are going to be real similar. Basically, the council approved an ordinance authorizing CO bonds for the construction of the FBO. projects to replace the old terminal that we've just talked about. The city applied for and received federal grants from both the ATP, which, by the way, I forgot to mention a while ago, that was a competitive grant that every airport in the country was competing for, and only, I forget the exact number, but only a small amount of airports received them, and we did. Also, other grants, as you see there. The construction phase of this project, again, will be provided through a combination of these grants with no impact to the operational fund or the fund balance. Again, Skylark Field is a general aviation airport, falls under TxDOT. Now, the FAA requires federally funded projects to have professional experience, oversight, and documentation of the construction projects. There's a ton of reports and things that we have to submit. So they require professional oversight. Garver LLC is the airport's engineer of record and was selected in accordance with state law. So staff negotiated a professional services agreement with Garver in the amount of $482,500 for the construction administration, the on-site resident project representative services, construction material testing, and project closeouts. And again, this $482,500, 100% funded by the bond. Staff's recommendation is the council approve the professional service agreement with Garver in the amount of $482,500 and recommends that city council authorize the city manager or his designee to execute all contract documents and all change orders or actions within the amounts set by state or local law. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. There are no questions for you. Madam Secretary.
PH 24036, hold a public hearing on the proposed tax rate for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Council, Mrs. Drake have the next 5 items. Good evening, Mrs. Drake.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this item is for the tax rate public hearing that we'll hold tonight. So we'll start with the description of the property tax rate. There's a no new revenue rate. That is a tax rate that will generate the same amount of tax revenue as the previous fiscal year on properties taxed in both fiscal years. And for FY 2025, that no new revenue rate is $59.96. The budgeted tax rate is $65.73. Our current tax rate for fiscal year 2024 is $62.08. And then the voter approval rate, which is the no new revenue rate times 3.5% plus any unused increment, is $71.14. Should the voter approval rate be exceeded, it sets off an automatic election. So for here, we have the budgeted rate at $65.73. Using our preliminary values that we had when we proposed the budget, it was $69.5 million in total tax levy. Once we received the certified tax roll in late July, it brings in $70 million, which was an additional $533,984. Which was allocated to $418,984 was allocated for the Stagecoach project, and then the $115,000 balance was for debt service. And then for the current rate, if it were to be used to for the FY25 budget, we would have to cut $3.1 million. If the no new revenue rate were to be used, we would have to cut $5.3 million. And if the voter approval rate were to be used, it would bring in an additional $6 million. So looking at the FY24 tax rate of $62.08 compared to the proposed rate that was set for the tax ceiling on August 6th, it's $65.73. That is 3.65 cents, and that is a 5.88% increase. And when you look at $1, 44 cents of that goes to KISD, 33 cents goes to City of Killeen, 17 cents goes to Bell County, and 6 cents goes to other entities. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There are no questions. Madam Secretary.
OR 24010. Consider an ordinance adopting the annual budget for the City of Killeen for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2024, and ending September 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Mr.
So for the budget and tax rate adoption, we've already completed all of the items, and we are now down to the final steps for the adoption of the budget, ratify the tax revenue increase, and set the tax rate once we hold the tax rate public hearing. This is the total budget. The revenues are $273 million, and the expenditures are $271 million. The change in fund balance of $1.6 million, with a projected ending fund balance of $99 million. And tonight, once we go through those slides, then we'll stop and take a record vote to adopt the budget.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to read the next item to the record.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. RS 24159, consider memorandum resolution ratifying the property tax revenue increase reflected in the annual budget for the fiscal year October 1, 2024 through September 30th, 2025.
Thank you,
So-
Madam Secretary.
So the next step is to ratify the property tax revenue increase. So local government code requires that once you adopt the budget, then you need to ratify the property tax revenue increase. And in this case, that's $5.6 million, which is 8.81%. $5.2 million of that is M&O, and $392,932 is for INS, or debt service. And then we would stop and take a vote to ratify the property tax increase.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. OR 24011, consider an ordinance setting a tax rate of 60.6573 per $100 valuation, comprised of .5107 for maintenance and operations and .1466 for debt service for fiscal year 2025, tax year 2024.
Thank you.
And then the final step would be for setting the tax rate. The maintenance and operations portion is 5107, and that brings in $55.2 million in budgeted revenue. The INS, or debt service, is 14.66, and that brings in $14.8 million. And the total tax rate is 65.73 for a total of $70 million. And then the requirement would be to stop and take a record vote. It requires 60% of city council, or 5 members, and then there is specific language that is required for the motion. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor and Mrs. Drake. Just one quick question here. I know Killeen, recently in the last several years, our tax rate had topped out about 75 cents. Is that correct? 74.98?
74.98.
Okay, and we're currently at 62 cents.
We're at 62.08, and we've went down 12 cents over the last few years.
Okay,
The
so
74.98 was a few years ago.
okay,
So,
so we've been on a steady decline of the tax rate.
over
That'd
the
be-
last several years, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay.
Council, before we bring this to a vote, do any council member have any questions concerning the budget before we move on? All right, Madam Secretary.
RS 24160, consider a memorandum resolution to adopt the 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal year 2025 through 2029.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mrs. Drake, I apologize for that.
One more.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have the capital improvement program, and this just shows a summary by type. The only change from when it was originally proposed is on the transportation. It has the additional $418,498 for the Stagecoach project. Your total for the CIP, the additional funding for FY25 is $37.6 million. And this just shows it by type. And then this shows it by fund. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
There are no questions for you. Madam Secretary.
Madam Mayor, the next item is the citizen comments on agenda items.
Thank you. Each citizen will have 4 minutes to speak. Council, you will have 1 minute to discuss, give an answer or a comment. Starting off with the first individual, Mrs. Heather McNeely. Good evening, you have 4 minutes.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I will say I had to have someone sign up for me at 3 o'clock because I couldn't be here. So possibly if there's a way for residents to be able to sign up ahead of time for people who work, that would be nice. So I would like to state by speaking exactly what I told you. Excuse me, sorry, I wasn't expecting to be first. So on July 2nd, exactly 9 weeks ago, I spoke to you and said, per the 15-year pre-annex agreement of the donut hole signed August 17th, 2006, that went into effect in 2008, a CIP or bond was to be put in for the donut hole area's drainage and infrastructure. I have yet to see where a CIP is put in for the donut hole area, and we are now in the year of 2024 and looking at a CIP plan that goes until 2030. I can only hope that the CIP for 2025's presentation will be presented in the agenda packet. This is not, just so you guys know, this drainage is not a new concern. I have brought it to the attention of the entire council with no response from most of you, maybe from some of you, but still no resolution nor engineering coming out to those properties. It was very discouraging to see Bermuda Phase Street flooding on that CIP list and was listed as TID. But now I am impressed, it is on there today, but it's listed as only needing $732,000, even though it was voted in 2015 for $772,000. How did it decrease in pricing with the cost of building increasing? There is now a line item in your bond, in your CIP, that there is, from 206 bond, that there is $843,000 left over from that 2006 bond. So why are we only using $732,000 of it for something that was approved for $772,000? I also asked if there would be a new FEMA flood zone map put in. There has not been a flood study done since 2008, and yet our population has increased tenfold since then. and we have not had a flood study done, and it's not in this CIP. How do we continue to build homes with improper infrastructure and flooding throughout our entire city? These are things you need to take into consideration, and maybe there needs to be more time than a workshop to a meeting to discuss this, because I know you will now be voting on this CIP, and maybe you didn't know about these things until I just noticed it now. This is not a conducive way to conduct a meeting, nor to treat citizens to come in and discuss these situations. I appreciate you giving me this time. If any of you would like to take the last 30 seconds to ask me questions. Thank you.
James Silks. Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Evening, Council. In 2020 study, Tremere had an ADT, average daily traffic rate of 2,000 near Patterson Middle School and 1,500 near Chaparral. Meanwhile, Featherline had 8,000 in 2020 and has since increased to over 11,000, which is a 31% increase. Tremere, in this particular stretch between Chaparral and Stagecoach, with a 31% increase, would still only be 2,620. The justification in the CIP to widen Tremere Road states to accommodate necessary vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic demands. It also states will include pavement to meet the current city standards and accommodate the increased use in the area. First, what study was done to show increased use and necessary vehicle demands on Tremere? Two, when I pointed out that Featherline did not meet pavement width requirements for a minor arterial, it didn't matter. But now it is a viable justification for Tremere. Tremere has no ingress-egress points to subdivisions. Currently, the only development on Tremere is the opening of a new church, a potentially privately owned sports complex, and a projected increased use from Turnbow Ranch. However, as Councilman Segarra said during the Featherline zoning, you aren't going to build 600 homes in a year. It would take 10 years. So why is Tremere Road on the CIP and not Featherline Road? In 2014, the city was contractually obligated to widen Chaparral Road prior to any development in Turnbow Ranch. The city would recoup $4.1 million in repayments from the subdivision's governing district by passing it on to residents in mud taxes. However, the city will not get these funds until Chaparral is widened within the scope of Turnbow Ranch's segment, and even then is dependent on the water and wastewater utility connections. I'm bringing this up because Tremere Road was supposed to directly extend into Turnbow Ranch, which is why it was added to the transportation CIP in the first place. However, that does not seem likely with the creation of Rocky Creek Ranch Road and Rocky Road creation and improvements. I do not believe the developer is going to pay for that extension directly into Turnbow Ranch. As of today, there is zero reason Tremere should be prioritized above Featherline. Featherline has 5 times the average daily traffic, direct ingress and egress to Yale Ranch, and expanding police headquarters, 2 gas stations, 2 additional upcoming commercial projects, and it will serve as an additional corridor for Thousand Oaks and is the main corridor for a high school, middle school, and potentially a future elementary school. Featherline was also supposed to be improved in 2014 within 5 years, just like the other previous deals, but none of that came to fruition. However, Featherline is the most used and one of the highest accident-rated 2-lane roads in the city, and yet it isn't on any study document for funding or even planning for funding. There was a mention of Featherline on a May 25 bond in a recent article. However, why do residents have to vote on a bond for Featherline, but Tremere is placed in the CIP for future funding? This is an injustice to the residents and the students who traverse on this road each day. Alana Green is the Chaparral High School Student Council president. She brought 127 signatures to the county commissioner about that intersection, Featherline and Chaparral. She did that in 4 days of just students and staff at Chaparral discussing how afraid she was to drive to school. You got to fix Featherline. It has to be a priority for this city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a reminder to the citizens that staff are our experts who make the recommendations for prioritizing roads. And yes, the council can override that, but it's important for us to rely on the expert opinion who understand the engineering, the history, and the funding mechanisms to make these things happen. Those are the experts that we're often relying on. My understanding is that Featherline resides in Councilman Solomon's district. Is that correct? Which would make you the strongest advocate for this road. And I'm familiar with Featherline. I couldn't agree that it's an injustice. I just think we're following the recommendations and having the full picture on the best path forward. So I understand there's concerns for Featherline. There are existing concerns for tons of streets across the city of Killeen and not just Featherline. Thank you.
Mr. Fernino, I apologize, sir, you have 4 minutes.
For the record, I'm here to speak about the budget and specifically on travel. And even more specific to that, the funded travel to AUSA and why it is not necessary. First off, we have the largest chapter of AUSA in the country in this town. And if the propaganda is to be believed, why are we not hosting AUSA? We can have the folks come down from DC, they get their rental cars washed, drive on our banged up roads and eat at about 72 different varieties of chicken joint. Why don't we host that? But my specific problem with the AUSA is, or the trip to it, not the organization, is any legation from this city going to AUSA and with their representation in the past, in the media, and on record. And I speak specifically to one person that I definitely have a problem going to AUSA to represent this city is our mayor. For years, she has touted her military record and everything else. And before I go any further, I'm glad I live in the greatest country in the United States. Freedom of Information Act. Everything that you've said about your military career, Madam Mayor, largely fabricated. I have your military record.
Mr. Fornino, I know
You're
you
going to go
take...
mix? No, this is my 4
Mr.
minutes. This is fact.
Please stop the clock, Madam Secretary.
It's false, ladies and gentlemen.
Point of
She's a
order.
liar.
This has nothing to do with...
Mr. Boyd.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
It doesn't matter what he say.
What I say.
Mr.
You're a liar.
Fernino.
You're going to go up and mix with
Mr.
dignitaries.
Fernino.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Fernino, you
Would
can
you
stay
please-
on the agenda.
This is on the agenda.
My military records, which I know you don't have, but my military records,
That I don't?
you don't have my military records. So, Mr. Fernino,
deployed.
you can stop
You never
making
deployed.
it about
National
me.
Personnel Records
And,
Center.
that's your first warning. That's your first one. You stay on the agenda
warning, this is
and
91
stay
91's copy.
on the agenda,
This is on the
or
agenda.
please take your
I have no
seat.
business going to AUSA.
Mr. Fernino, stay on the agenda.
This is on
Madam
the agenda.
Secretary, that was your first one. Madam Secretary.
Yes, ma'am.
With a ribbon to match your dress.
Please start the agenda, please. The clock on here.
Funding
Yes,
you
ma'am.
to go up to DC and represent yourself? Mention this for court-martial proceeding, transcript not on file.
Mr. Fernino, you're not going to sit here and slander and defamation of my character. You going to stay on the agenda or you leaving?
This is fact.
Point of order.
Ms.
Point of
Fernino, your
order,
time
Madam
is
Mayor.
up. Please take your seat.
No, I'm gonna take a seat at the bar.
Please
91,
take your
91,
seat.
this.
Mr. Sean Price. Oh, I apologize. Councilmember Solomon, did you want to say something? I noticed you on there.
No.
Okay, Councilmember Boyd.
Here in the city of Killeen, we have you have to be wise how you speak up here because everything is documented and is printed. but this city has so much potential. And this council is working hard and works hard to represent the city well, including myself and my district. So I apologize to those who watch online, who sit in this chamber and endure some of this behavior and the frustration, because our goal is to get city business done. And that's what we're determined to do. I have citizens contact me concerned about what goes on a regular basis in these meetings, knowing that this is not how business should be done, and knowing that this community is not reflected in that manner. So again, I have to apologize for that. There should not be anyone getting off the agenda as recommended and as stated by the mayor. That's why I'm calling for these points of order so that we can maintain business, stay professional, and get the job done. Thank you.
Mr. Price, good evening. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So I got to be kind of fast because you know me, I always have a lot of things to say, and I always got a lot of hate from most people up here. So, so on the RS 24-138, I'm just wondering who failed to hold people responsible for damaging government property. So if the vendors or patrons at our ballroom, if they damage the walls, then they're responsible for it. And somebody was responsible for holding those people responsible. And that person that didn't hold those responsible for causing damage should be held responsible or lose their job because they failed to perform their duties as required by their employment contract by the city. So that was failed. That's a failure, but it's costing us $112,000. Not only that, that's what it's cost to replace this. That's what the estimated cost is, $112,000, right here. It's written right here. Not only that, you can get wallpaper reprinted. It's never not there. You can always just take a sample of it and you can send it off. Even there's a place in New York City called Fine Print that will reprint your wallpaper for you. All you got to do is give them a sample. Costs a little extra money, but it's nowhere near $112,000, I can tell you that. With the concrete on RS 24-155, 3,000 square feet breaks down to about 1,000 yards. So we're paying $526 per square yard of concrete. That's less than a mile. We're buying less than a mile of concrete plus the 105 ramps for $526,000 plus dollars, right? That's a lot of money in concrete, just saying. And most of it's going to the schools. So somebody doing the planning at the schools, they need to readdress their foresight on what they need to do. I get the ADA, but I still don't understand how we're 34 years behind becoming compliant with an act that was enacted in 1990. We should have been a little bit more forward thinking with coming in compliant with ADA if we're that far behind. Just, I don't get it. So with the airfield, with Skylock Airfield, I get it that it's an elite airfield for the elite of Killeen and the area because it doesn't have any passengers that come in and out of there. These are all private airplanes, private companies that go in and out of there, but it's the city that pays for everything. So I'm just wondering why that all these public entities, why isn't it them paying for it? Because I don't know why it's coming out of tax dollars. Same thing for the golf course. We're paying for a golf course that only 3% of the populace in Killeen actually utilize. So everybody else is paying for the elites to have their elite little airfield and $4 million for a new terminal. I just think that, maybe the companies that are out there that are, utilizing it primarily every week or every month, let them buy it. Let them put the money in there. Let them sponsor it. Just an opinion. And with that, we're not on the DS. Right? Thank you.
Melissa Brown, thank you.
Which expert staff said parks are priorities and feather lines in District 3? The mental health co-responder program is something the citizens have been calling for years, and I'm thankful that our new chief has finally brought this forward. The one question from citizens that I've heard is if these qualified responders are going to be referring individuals in need to local services. It sounds like it, but verification would be nice. When it comes to the sidewalks, first of all, we are doing sidewalks around schools right after school started. Why didn't we not start these over summer break? The ARPA funding for this was identified 3 years ago. If there were maps and pictures included, we would know the scope of work on each of these. And has anyone actually seen the contract for this item? Because the public certainly hasn't. Is there any more money in the child safety fund so that we could possibly do more sidewalks, more ramps, more crosswalks, more lighting? Let's stop, as far as the grocery store, let's stop pushing 38th and Rancier, because clearly that's not going to happen. We can't bulldoze down the high school or the churches, so let's start looking at other locations like Rancier and Twin Creek, which would be better location and has a higher population density already. As far as the tax rate, not only did the city violate section 26.0443 of the state tax code that gives you two options, either mail out a paper copy of the notice to every single individual individually, or publish it in a newspaper, but if you are going to publish it in a newspaper, it may not be in the part of the paper in which legal notices and classified advertisements appear. By posting the notice of public hearing twice in the classified section, it said that the city was in violation. It also said the public hearing would be at 3 p.m., not at whatever time it is now or when the public hearing starts. People have left who were here to talk about this because of your stall tactic of moving item 11 to your first discussion. $60 million are in proposed bonds for parks. Somewhere around $100 million for a new city hall. No CIP for Elm sidewalks, crosswalks, or lighting, even though late in 2023, there were 2 moms who came in and told you about their family tragedy. It was important enough for you to add to your agenda and act like you were listening, but not important enough to put on this budget for CIPs, even though you implied that you would. If you want other sidewalks fixed around the city, check your priorities. Give up travel and food expenses for yourselves. Put safety like fire stations, drainage, sidewalks, and roads before fancy new buildings and parks. Let's take care of the drainage issues that we have. We have students right now, and it's been brought up by previous speakers, who have to walk to school along a road with no sidewalks, either in the road or through the drainage areas. So what happens when it rains and that's partially a flood zone? Which one of you wants to be responsible when a child drowns? Go ahead and we'll wait. Advocating is not just for your district, Mr. Boyd. Advocating, you can have a comment if you want. I please do, because I get another chance to speak, and there's no point of order. I can say your name. Advocating for the city doesn't mean just advocating for District 4, because your vote counts equally for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the record, Councilman Boyd represents West Killeen, about 45,000 citizens, and I am here to advocate specifically on their behalf, as they're the ones who put me here. They vote for me. At the same time, I'm responsible for voting for the city as a whole, being a member of the council, so I don't apologize for that. People know I'm a strong advocate for my district, which is why our roads are getting fixed, parks are coming in, and you're seeing improvements in West Killeen. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I'm calling your name now. I apologize for that.
Right, though, anyway. I'm here to address RS 24-138. I was so happy to see that on the agenda. I have seen that center come from nothing to what it is today, and I have done a lot of classes there. The environment is conducive to learning, and I know the improvements are going to be done perfectly. I have some kudos to you guys. You're doing an excellent job. I don't have the opportunity to tell you that, but I have to do that tonight. I just want to let you know that, okay?
Thank you. That's all our citizen comments, and I just have one comment. When it comes to our council members and staff members, we travel. We do travel, and we travel for training. We travel to events. I am a prior AUSA board member, and I am proud to be a veteran. It's not many that have served, but I am proud of that. So when we travel, we're bringing back information to you and ideas. And I serve on 2 to 3 boards on the federal level and also serve on the state. So when I go, I represent the city of Killeen. As mayor, that is my job, to represent the city. So I apologize, as council member board stated, I haven't done anything wrong. But I just want you all to be aware in the upcoming months, right before when we vote on the budget, just be aware that what we vote on, we're gonna put it forth on these projects. What we say we're gonna do, we have been doing it, and we're gonna continue to do it, thanks to our staff. With that being said, we're going to take a break. 5 minutes. Is Councilwoman Cobb still on record on being on before we go? Because we have to take a record vote. That is so, so important. All right. Council, I would like to ask one thing to be moved forward before we go into our regular session. We have a discussion item, and that's on the urgent care. One of the managers of the project have been waiting for a while, a resident. So in case you have questions, if you don't mind, can I move item 10 up? All right, thank you. All right, council, this is an item that, thank you for coming back, Councilwoman Cobb. Please stay on and don't drive. We need you for the record vote that we will be having. Can you hear me? Thank you. So the discussion item is the economic development incentive. For the last couple of months, I've been working with Mr. Connell and also Mr. Revelle with an urgent care center. The urgent care center is scheduled to break ground on Rancier in October. One of the things that we worked on was some kind of incentive to assist with that urgent care, which is not a want, it is a need on the north side of Killeen. Every resident should have access to a medical facility. I'm bringing this before the council because KEDC have not voted on the contract as far as an incentive. And if by happen chance this month the vote does not go through, I just want to say, bring it before the council because we as a city need an urgent care on the north side, just like a grocery store. And in order to help with the success of this, I'm just asking you when it come back before you, if it come back, because we're going to give KEDC the opportunity to discuss this month and vote on it. And if not, I will be bringing this back to the council. And that's just what I wanted to discuss with you. All right? Thank you. We will now move, thank you, ma'am, for being here. We will now move to consent agenda. Madam Secretary.
MN 24021, consider minutes of regular city council meeting of August 6, 2024. RS 24138, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing the award of bid 2443 interior wall renovations for KCCC Ballroom to NMCB Incorporated in the amount of $112,300.31. RS 24153, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement with Central County Services for a mental health co-responder program. RS 24154, consider a memorandum resolution approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee and Atmos Energy regarding the 2024 Atmos Rate Review Mechanism filing. RS 24155, consider a memorandum resolution awarding bid number 2437, sidewalk and ADA ramp improvements to Jordan Enterprises LP in the amount of $526,786. RS 24156, consider a memorandum resolution approving change order number 4 to the Taxiway B rehabilitation contract with TTG Utilities Incorporated, resulting in a reduction of $275,488.17. RS 24157, consider a memorandum resolution awarding bid number 2409 to Synergy Commercial Construction for the new general aviation terminal building at Skylark Field Airport in the amount of $4,121,266.45. RS 24158, consider a memorandum resolution approving a professional services agreement with Garver LLC for the construction phase of the new general aviation terminal building at Skylark Field Airport in the amount of $482,500.
Councilmember Adams.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Councilmember Boyd.
Second.
All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Councilwoman Cobb, is that a yes? Okay. All right, motion carries 7-0. Discussion items. Madam Secretary.
DS 24054, North Killeen grocery update.
Welcome back, Mr. Revelle.
There we go. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, this is the North Killeen grocery store update. Basically, the background really deals with the USDA. I know we oftentimes call areas that have limited access to fresh foods, food deserts. The USDA has kind of moved away from that term, and they're really characterizing these areas as low income, low access. Typically, in urban areas, they say if you're within more than a mile from a fresh food source, it's considered to be that low access, low income area. In rural, it's about a 10-mile distance. In looking at the USDA Food Access Research Atlas, and I'll have a map to kind of show the areas in North Killeen that's considered to be have low income and low access to fresh foods. But typically that information is based on 3 types of stores: supercenters, supermarkets, and then those large grocery stores, where a large grocery store is defined as something that has sales greater than $2 million for annual sales. It is important to note in the last bullet that that data does not take into account commissaries, dollar stores, club stores, and convenience stores. So this map here, there are 2 major things I'd like to share on this map. Those areas that are in green and in the city of Killeen. So you've got this location here, just below CTE, Central Texas, and then this bottom edge here is actually Stan Schluter. And then you have this area here. This is a location that includes the Anthem Park site along with other sites. It is cordoned off between W.S. Young and Roy Reynolds, and then to the north is VMB, and also here is CTE. And then the last green area that's really in the city limits is really in this location here, areas north of Rensselaer, cordoned between W.S. Young and Roy Reynolds, and then to the northernmost city limits. All of those green areas, again, are considered to be locations where there's low access and low income associated with access to fresh foods. The other thing I want to point out is that on this map, downtown is about in this location here. And what you notice is that downtown is not in the green. And part of the reason why downtown is not in the green are all these stars. And of course, this extra one is a commissary, but all of these stars represents location where there is access to fresh foods. Those locations may not be a Walmart or an H-E-B, but they are locations where there's access to fresh food. And some of those locations, based on past data and market analysis that were done, actually perform relatively well. And so the next few slides really just kind of drill in on those different locations, exactly where they are. The La Tapatia Meat Market is on 204 West Rensselaer Avenue. As you can see, fresh meats and foods are there. There's a lot of selection associated with the Hispanic community, but there are foods and fresh foods that are available at this location. The next one, the Killeen Nutritional Center, that's the one just downtown here. I think most people know that's the Cuban shop, but they also have groceries that caters to a variety of communities, African and a variety of communities. But again, you're showing that there's produce and fresh foods at that location. Delicia's Meat Market is right there on Veteran Memorial Boulevard. Again, an opportunity for fresh foods that exist there. There were some numbers, at least that was done, I think back in May, that showed sales from this location about 300,000 a week from a study that was done. Omart, just off of Fort Hood Street, weekly sales from that same study was about 100,000. And again, they have fresh foods and cater to certain cultures, but they still have fresh foods that are available as well. The next few slides really get into some of the actions that we've taken really since the last key conversation that we've had associated with doing the work that's necessary to try to attract a grocery store to North Killeen. So I'll just go through these quickly. In July, the council allocated funding for the pre-development of the site that the city owns at 2906 East Rancier Avenue. So it's approximately that 18-acre site along Rancier, right next to the city cemetery. In addition, in July of last year, Oasis completed a market survey. And so remember, I was talking about that 300,000 yearly and that 100,000 yearly. That was some of the information that came from that market survey that Oasis did. In August of 2023, the city also engaged a firm to do a phase one environmental analysis for our site, just to kind of make sure we didn't have any environmental concerns, and that phase one came back clean. And really, the phase one is a literature review, just looking at past use, but it didn't warrant a need to do anything beyond the phase one. And then in September of 2023, KDC and IBCC visited Oasis grocery store in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was conversations related to that, but at the end of the day, the end of the conversation was Oasis indicated that they would need at least $8 million to be able to build out and fully outfit a grocery store to their specifications. Where their specifications was a grocery store about 16,000, somewhere between 14 and 16,000 square feet. Then in September 2023, the city staff engaged Retail Coach to further look at the market in the area of North Killeen, so especially in the vicinity of 38th and Rancier Avenue. Retail Coach did identify that this location, this general area, Rancier and 38th, could be a good location for a grocery store. They did identify the numbers that you see there, about $50 million in terms of demand associated with supermarkets, associated with a grocery store, and about 47 million associated with supermarket. But what these numbers indicate is that there is demand for a grocery store in this smaller area. The larger market study that was done actually showed an even bigger demand. It dealt with a larger area, going from really everything north of CTE, of Central Texas Expressway. But again, the bottom line is the demand is relatively strong. December 2023 through April 2024, Retail Coach did a deeper dive and said, okay, since we know that there is some demand and that demand could possibly create some interest among potential grocers, let's have some conversations. So United Rentals and Tom Thumb, both of those are actually separate brands, but they're associated with the same company, Albertson Company. They basically reported that they didn't have any current plans to enter into the North Killeen market. As a matter of fact, Albertson is currently in merger conversations with Kroger. I think it's before the FTC, if I'm not mistaken. It's before the feds, put it that way, to see if that's going to be able to move forward. Aldi communicated that they already have 2 locations, covering the Killeen market, and no current plans to add. And keep in mind, when we talk to these grocers, they're in the grocery business. And so when we're having a conversation with them, they're looking at their business interests. If they already have a footprint here, to them, why does it make sense to add a footprint if they already have the market covered? And that was really a lot of the feedback. They're already here. They already have a presence. HEB did not respond at all. Walmart neighborhood store reported they're not expanding that brand, as some of you may be aware. Again, Kroger has indicated that they did investigate North Killeen, but right now they are staying out of Central Texas. And then Sprouts really basically said North Killeen is not a fit for his model. Sprouts is more so of a higher brand type store, and they said North Killeen was really not the fit for what they're looking for the customers they're looking to serve. In April of 2024, we also reached out to the Central Texas Council of Governments. We reached out to them because we thought that they could be a good resource as it relates to federal and state resources. There are healthy food initiative programs that's out there. And to some extent, those programs provide grants that allow grocery stores to start. But even if you read some of the national news on that, the issue is not just being able to start a grocery store. The issue is also being able to sustain it. And a lot of the national news on that says that unless you've got resources that deal with sustaining, you may be throwing good money after a bad thing. Not to say that we don't want a grocery store. It's just talking about the reality of the situation. In June of 2024, the city also decided to pursue, and this was at the conclusion of all those discussions with the potential grocers, and this was at the conclusion of that final discussion that we kind of had with Oasis, that it would make better sense to try to pursue a request for proposals for the city to identify that site, as we mentioned, by the cemetery, 18-acre site, and say, hey, listen, this is completely open. We did a request for proposal. It was completely open to say, hey, this is your site. Design it and develop it as you wish. The only requirement that we had in the RFP was that they would include the grocery store as an anchor to the project. So it's an 18-acre site. You may only need 2 or 3 acres for the grocery store. The rest of the acres, be creative and use it how you would like for residential, commercial, whatever would make sense for your capital stack. We put that out. It was out for, I believe, about 3 to 4 weeks, and we did not get any responses. I will say, in terms of the solicitation, we put it out and we advertised it, but we also did some direct reach outs to a couple of key people, and still no responses. I did have a follow-up conversation to understand more clearly why Oasis didn't submit a response, because we had thought they would be submitting one. But it's my understanding from the conversations that I've had, they misunderstood the intent of the RFP and didn't get with the rest of their development team to make the submittal. Obviously, the RFP has closed, but we tell people when we're in conversations with them, if you've got a proposal that you like to submit, we'll take it, because the city of Killeen is open for any proposals that may come in that will allow for a grocery store to be in North Killeen. The last thing I want to share is that in talking to these potential grocers, what they've said to us is that, in order for them to make a business decision to come here, they've got to have new residential development. And what they've said to us is that new residential development should be something that happens relatively quick and relatively short order, about 5,000 new rooftops. And currently in North Killeen, and this was just looking at the area just north of Central Texas Expressway, we know on the books, that's not to say more couldn't come, but we know on the books there's about 3,500 units that are planned. Most of those units are associated with Hampton Park. And so that's why, we said over the next 7 to 10 years, assuming that it's fully built out then. So there's still a ways to go to reach targets that these grocers are expecting. There's still work to be done. And so just wanted to give this update to council. And if there are questions, we are here to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Revelle, for your thorough overview. And council, I know you may have questions, but I'm hoping that tonight, before we end this item, that we can get a motion of direction from the council to send out the RFP again, because we cannot let this go. We have to keep pushing until someone say yes. With that being said, Councilmember Segarra.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Revelle. I think that was very good presentation. Kind of lets everybody know what most of us really understood. But my first question is, and you mentioned 3 or 4 grocery stores that are like your mom and pop type grocery stores here in the city. Has any of those ever asked for like incentives or tax breaks or anything to do anything there to build a building? Because some of them been around for a long time.
So the only one I can think of, sir, is the one that, the council considered several months ago, the one downtown, the North Killeen, the nutritional food center
Yeah.
as a part of the APA grants. But besides that,
No,
none
and
that
I
I'm
don't
aware
think
of, sir.
we've given them anything yet, have we?
No, sir, we have not.
Yeah. And because I think that we probably need to re-strategize, because I know we've worked hard over the years, and when somebody thinks about grocery store, as you mentioned, they're looking for a big superstore, H-E-B. But, in some areas, they don't want those big, they don't want to take away from your mom and pop. And so I think that, as we look for big grocery stores, I think a strategy should be, how can we help some of these locals that have taken risks? Because some of these stores been there for a long time, over 20 years. And as you mentioned, they provide a lot of, vegetables, meats, all the necessities, and they've taken the risk. And I think what we need to really look at is, how can we help these local grocery stores? How can we help them improve? Because, I think that we may be sitting on, as a commercial on TV says, you're sitting on a gold mine. And we just need to look at that, because these guys, you put up beautiful pictures, and I've gone to a lot of them, and they bring fresh produce, fresh baked. The other thing, a grocery store, doesn't matter what size, we know that this is a fact, they kind of cater to the local community, whatever's local, because I've gone to stores, and it's like, I've never had this, but if it's not moving off the shelves, they stop bringing it. And so these local companies that are in our north part of Killeen, they understand something that I think maybe your big grocery stores do not, because they keep bringing in products that the north part is buying. Otherwise, they would not be in business. And so a lot of times we try to force something on people, but we don't know. We don't know what is that area. So I think those are the kind of conversations we should be having with them. And, I'm really speaking to the council and everybody here.
Yes, sir.
That, instead of, so much energy in trying to bring it, I'm not saying not to stop that, but I think a lot of the focus should be in working with these local. I know that one of the reasons that the incentives has been held up, because there are certain things that this grocery store needs to do here locally. And they've been around for so long that a lot of times they're not aware. So we need to build that connection and help them fix some of this stuff, and encourage them to just keep expanding and doing the right thing that they are doing. So,
Yes, sir.
and lastly, I'm glad you mentioned foot traffic, because that's the big thing. And foot traffic is the big thing in North Killeen. Doesn't matter what best grocery store you put out there, if you don't have the foot traffic, they're not going to do well. And that's the number one issue right there. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Cigar, and what you said is correct. But I think the main objective is a grocery store on the north side. I do believe people are aware of other grocery stores throughout the city, and if that is the case, the route we have to go, to give incentives to grocery stores that's nearby, I mean, that would be a council decision. But I think the people just don't want to drive on throughout the city to get groceries, which I don't think they should. I don't think we should give up. Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I agree too about promoting our locals, but I know we have, since this discussion a few years ago, we had someone tell us we were giving them the farm to agree to bring a certain grocery store in, and they said no. And so we didn't own the land. And if we did eminent domain, that'll be another 10 years before we could even take the land. And that's not a fun thing in Texas.
Yes.
I know that we have an abundance of a particular brand who has requested exceptions and who are also changing their model to have a grocery store. Have we reached out to, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, and I know we can't say here because for proprietary reasons, and they are a national model, but that's an option. But also want the citizens to understand that, my statement about the eminent domain is that we don't own the land. The land we're offering now is because it belongs to the city. I know that we approved some zonings further down closer to Roy Reynolds, but that doesn't bring us to the rooftop number that you mentioned. But then the land that we do have in those areas, it's not enough room to do a grocery store. I know after talking to you, some of your analysis.
Yes,
But I also was gonna ask, can we do the reopening of the RFP? And the mayor already had brought that up, so if I may, I would like to do a motion of direction to authorize a new request for a proposal.
Yes, sir, after all the other council members have spoken, since we're in the discussion phase. Are you finished?
I am.
Councilmember Solomon?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Ravel, thank you for that presentation.
Yes, sir.
Really in-depth. The question I have we reached out to Dollar General? Are you familiar with that they have they now have a double the size of their regular store's supermarket?
Mm-hmm.
And they're already up in the North Killeen. They do have a new floor plan now. It's a larger one. It's double the size. So if they're already up there, I wonder if we could reach out to them and see what they would think about it, because they're in North Killeen. I believe they got about 2 or 3 stores in the North Killeen area.
Yes, sir. And that's if the council makes the decision to reopen the RFP, we can reach out to as many different grocers as possible, including Dollar General. I will say, and this, I guess, goes back to Councilman Adams as well, across the city, there are probably about 28 to 29, the number may be off a little bit, either Dollar General, Dollar Store, Dollar Tree, or Family Dollar. But you're right, there's been a lot of transitioning lately toward making sure that they have more refrigerated space and more fresh food and meat offerings.
Right, they do have a store, if you look it up online, it is called DG Market. They don't even call it Dollar General store.
Yes, sir.
It's DG Market.
Yes, sir.
And they're already in some cities across the country. So that's something you'll want to look at.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Councilwoman Cobb? We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. We'll come back to you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Ravel, for the presentation. We've been on the track for a while now, with dealing with the idea of what this looks like as far as grocery store in our area. I think the conclusion is that while this did not go away overnight, we're having difficulty in trying to establish one here in a different type of capacity than we have already. Immediately, though, we identified that the big box grocery store was not going to work for our area, District 1. It was not conducive, ideally, with that particular location. So that's why the focus was put on as far as identifying boutique-style grocers. Those are typically grocers that are under 25,000 square feet, right? Then the next challenge then for us became, okay, well, then what about the location, right? So you heard some people say that, why are you just focused on this one corner? Well, we weren't. Initially, we reached out to private owners who had real estate places that used to be grocery stores, places that could be possibly be transformed into grocery stores. And we also had private citizens also explore options. I'm very proud of that because I do appreciate, if you're watching, you know who you are, but I do appreciate the effort that they put in to try to help the citizens of Killeen with this grocery and exploring other options, franchise options and things like that. So the big box is not going to work in our area. We know that. The boutique, the Dollar General, DG stores is an option. We can definitely explore that for sure. Councilmember Cigar mentioned about, working with the local vendors. And I know that some of our challenge was not only with the local vendors, but vendors from out of state on the East Coast. If it's not part of their business model, unfortunately, if they don't have the plans to expand and to grow and to move into this particular type of area, it also compounds our challenges that we have, right? We can't just snap our fingers and make one, otherwise we would have done that already, right? So I think that, opening the RFP and keeping that on the forefront is going to be our best bet when it comes to the grocery store. But I just want to remind the citizens that there are options. So while we're saying there are options in District 1, it's not saying that's your end-all be-all. It's just that there's not nothing. Let's stop saying there's nothing, because there are successful grocers that are there. On top of that, we've got organizations that immediately went into action some years ago and started working on community gardens. Very proud of that as well, so that people had access at least to fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. They learned how to cook and learned how to maintain the things that they needed to sustain. And so there are people that have gone above and beyond within our community to make this work. So while it seems kind of bleak, right, we want to hear some good news or that we have something right out of the bat, we still have a lot of options on the table. And that's exciting, right?
Yes,
I think the key word that I said over and over and over again is that we're going to leave no stone unturned, right? So thank you again for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to know if the DG market concept would be suffice to fill this void.
I don't know enough about it, sir, to comment, but it sounds like from what Councilman Solomon said, it sounds like it's promising, but I just don't know enough to.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyd. Mr. Rivera, you didn't follow up after our conversation with that? Me, Councilwoman, Mayor Pro Tem?
Related to DG market?
We said the general, I didn't know it was DG, we just said the Dollar General store when we had our phone conference. You don't remember that?
The only thing that we've done so far is just determine the existing footprint that they have. So we haven't delved into a direct conversation with them. So that's still to be done.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Councilmember Adams,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
is that the motion of, Director?
Before I do the motion, because I don't want it to close out, but since I think HOP, the new system started today with the transit, microtransit, and I'm leading into this,
Yeah,
but
'cause that's off the agenda.
yeah, it's on. So we mentioned about the other smaller grocery stores in that immediate area.
Yes, sir.
So maybe we need to just put out to tell people to use that transit to get there. And I know it's not the immediate fix, but I just wanted to offer that on record too. But with that, I move that we.
Councilwoman, Cobb still hadn't spoken. Councilwoman Cobb?
It's not.
We cannot, would you please check your mute and turn your volume up, please? Because you will have to be, we will have to be able to hear you when you vote on the budget, or it will not count and your face is frozen. Okay, Councilmember Adams.
I move the motion of direction that we reopen the RFP.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I second that.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Councilwoman Cobb.
I do have a question, Madam.
Councilwoman Cobb. A minute.
Sure.
Okay, we're moving on, and you have to be able to vote. We have to be able to hear you when you say yes. So just check your stuff, and if you got, yeah, okay. All right, Mayor Pro.
Within that motion, did we need to specify to specifically focus on the DG store, DG market? Or will you do that, sir, as it relates to the RFP?
So
We
the
can- yes, ma'am.
RFP is open to
Anyone, correct.
anything.
But I want to
that
also
can
look
come.
into the DG market. Do we need to make a
Okay.
separate motion is my question for that?
Well, I
Or
think
can we
he
take it from
told
here?
Councilmember Solomon that he was going to look into that. And,
Thank you.
and just for the record, all council members, you have great ideas, but the residents on North Side want a grocery store. So really, no excuse, nothing we say. The bottom line, they want a grocery store. Great ideas, but they want one. All in favor of the motion of direction to open back up the RFP? Yes. All opposed? No. And Mr. Francisco? we gotta be able to hear her. Her what? Oh, okay. Well, we have to move on because we have to be able to hear you. I mean, when you say yes. I apologize for that, Councilwoman Cobb. And the motion of direction is, I can't see it. Would you please raise your hand, all in favor of the, okay, it's coming up. I apologize for that. Motion of direction carries 6-0 with Mayor Pro Tem not being able, with Councilwoman Cobb not being able to vote because she's on Zoom and we cannot hear her voice, a yes. With that being said, Madam Secretary.
DS 24056, discuss pending litigation.
Thank you, Council. On this item, we went behind closed doors. There was no action. Correct, Mr. Kagan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no action. All right, we will now go into the budget. Madam Secretary.
PH 24036, hold a public hearing on the proposed tax rate for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024, and ending September 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Council, Mrs. Drake has gone through the PowerPoints. Would you like for her to go back through it? No? All right. We will now.
If I could clarify on the notice that was mentioned earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
The notice was originally put in the newspaper on August 11th, and it had two minor discrepancies. It was reprinted on August 13th, but was in the wrong location, although we had given clear instructions of the law. So it was reprinted with the statement that it was corrected, and it was reprinted in the main section. And the notice is required to be printed 5 days prior to the hearing, so it was printed in plenty of time. It was also on the city's website since August 11th, and also ran on the government access channel, and alerts were sent out on August 11th.
Thank you, Mrs. Drake. We all knew that. Thank you. With that being said, we are going to go into our public hearing. Public hearing is open. Mr. Sean Price. Mr. Sean Price. There you go. Welcome back, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council. On the tax rate, proposed tax rate of this fiscal year, if I go into this, we're talking about raising it, is it 5.5% increase this year? Madam Mayor? Isn't that what we're going to increase it? No response? Okay. So with this, with the golf and the airfield, we're going to spend $7.6 million for FY25, just for the golf and the airfield, right? Then we're going to add a debt service of $17.9 million for fiscal year 25. So we're just going to toss, $17 million out the thing for our debt, right? Because we're keep borrowing money, right? Not that the country is $35 trillion in debt, but $1 trillion a year in service debt for that. Let's go ahead and add some more to the debt, right? Because you can always raise the value of my house to add another 14 cents to my tax dollar, right? IT, internet services, right? Going to give them almost $7 million for FY25. Okay, your internet's important. We can see how well that worked tonight, right, with the Zoom call. That's great, worth the $7 million, I think. But we're spending, I think, overall, we're spending $271 million next year, right? Out of everything? At least that's what it says on the, for the information for this item number, right? That's a lot of money, especially when we're only taking in 70 million. So I don't really understand how all this works, how the accounting happens. But with the other folks coming up here and talking about how we have the money being spent over 5-year plans, and those plans just fall through the wayside, right? I don't think we have great oversight of how the city is spending money. And then with just, because we want to do somebody's legacy, oh, your legacy is so important, we're going to go ahead and build this city hall and consolidate facilities. I think, we need to get some more prudence on there of how we spend our money, right? It's great to have all these amenities, but when you can't afford them and you got to move out of the city because you can't afford to live in the city, right? Kind of sucks, right? People in New York and LA and San Francisco are finding out real quick that they can't afford to live there anymore because their tax dollars can't pay for the services that they already have. So I just think that, yeah, it's just, piss poor performance is what it is. Somebody need to look at what they're doing.
Mr. Six, welcome back, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Hello again. So Councilmember Boyd, your District 4 improvements are built on the backs of District 1, 2, and 3 citizens and their tax dollars too. So I would just keep that in mind when considering improvements in and outside your district. I'm mindful of the tax rate and the increases, and I understand that those are needed. My question here today is, where is that money going? In the past 2 years alone, South Killeen residents have received almost nothing in return for their taxes in this upcoming increase. Majority of development is occurring in South Killeen, but there's no investment in the area. You have Yow Ranch, Thousand Oaks, Levi Crossing, Turnbow Ranch, Prairie View Estates, etc., and there's no amenities in South Killeen. We do not have a public park nearby. Lions Club Park is not South Killeen, and it's not walkable. Purser Park is great for southeast side, but not close to the subdivisions I just referenced. We have no public recreation areas. There's no library. Copper Mountain is not close to South Killeen, nor will be the Southwest Library. There's no grocery store. Your downtown grocery store slide says you need 5,000 new homes to be considered. We'll probably have that in Turnbow Ranch alone. And yet there's no projection for a grocery store nearby. And Mayor, you just said you shouldn't have to drive all around the city to get groceries. There's absolutely no return investment on amenities from the city for the residents in this area. From this increased tax rate, what is South Killeen receiving in return? We have one of the highest tax revenues per acre in the city, but all that money has been going to West Killeen and downtown, which is awesome for those residents. But that money has to be spread equally. Stagecoach, Chaparral, Featherline, other roads in the area still remain unfunded, not planned, and they're not planned 5 to 10 years from now. We still have drainage open items from the donut hole annexation back in 2006 that have still not been done in the area. Mr. Cagle, you told me in an email there's no funding for a temporary right turn lane on Featherline, but somehow y'all found $187,000 for the IBCC in 48 hours, which is fine. They should have got that. But that just shows me there's money available when there's something that you guys want to do. How can there not be money for a temporary measure to relieve traffic congestion and improve safety on Featherline and Chaparral? Why do these things have to be solely reliant on developer dollars when the city continues to increase tax rates? How can none of this revenue from South Killeen go back into South Killeen? What happens when you can no longer build in other districts? Who is going to fund these improvements in South Killeen 10 years from now? I've heard so much about the DV exemption, but yet the city does not consider it in their fiscal planning. And somehow you guys are always shocked when there's a deficit during budget time. You know, last time I was here, Spawn Ranch, you guys said there's gonna be $5,000 an acre for that addition. But none of you calculated the 67% possible DV exemption like Heritage Oaks, or the average 50% DV exemption that you quoted in your comp plan. You have to start calculating that into your fiscal planning, so when you get to this budget, you're not shocked and then have to increase the tax rates on the citizens. City needs to plan accordingly, develop responsibly, and you won't have to pass these burdens on to the citizens. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyd. No, I'm speechless. I really am on some of the things that I heard. Which
Yeah,
is,
it's a lot of misinformation. It's pretty
Yeah.
common, unfortunately. One of those being particularly IBCC, they did not get approved for the 187,000 that was mentioned. That was just an ask. So for the record, that's that. And the city of Killeen and our CIP projects, staff makes recommendations for projects, not just for specific areas of Killeen, but for the entire city in a specific order and in order of relevance and the need. So that's how that's done. I know you guys often hear me talk about West Killeen. I put a lot of emphasis on it. That's because I'm proud of my district, but that doesn't mean that all the resources have to go there or they will go there or that's just the best place for them to go. I'm just a strong advocate for my district. But if you look through the CIP, you'll see projects across the city, road projects, water improvement, drainage, et cetera, where they're needed. Those relevant needs are specifically located. Thank you.
Melissa Brown. I apologize, Councilmember.
And I also want to correct the record. Chaparral has been planned, considering the money is coming from the state, the county, and other agencies. Once the state releases the money and the priority, we move up on the priority, it'll be applied to us, because that is a very large project. But just to correct, that has been planned. The unfortunate thing, it moves back and forth based off of what the state considers their priorities as a whole.
Melissa Brown.
I'd like to thank the council for not addressing any of the questions or concerns brought up during citizen comments before you decided to vote. It proves why this is a horrible way to do business. I also hear a lot of misinformation coming from the dais. Difference of opinion is not misinformation. Incentives that come out of tax dollars should have been discussed before the citizen comments on the budget. And even if KEDC gives the incentives, it is still our tax money that goes into KEDC. You had the opportunity to set a lower tax rate based off of the proposed budget. Instead, the refusal prioritize, but instead you didn't. You're actually giving us a higher rate than what we need for the budget that was proposed to you. Refusal to prioritize safety will continue to increase our insurance premiums, both as a city and as property owners. What was said and it implied and indicated is that the city manager was able to easily identify $187,502 for IBCC. Not that it was given, because y'all didn't even listen to that presentation, but it was identified. If that was identified as being able to be reallocated, then that would indicate to at least the citizens that that was not a required or priority amount in those different budgeted areas. I will add that this is lowballing what could be cut. Of course, the council wouldn't know what what I'm talking about because they didn't hear the presentation. Wouldn't take much to find the additional $346,482 to set the tax rate at the 65.73 cent budgeted rate. But y'all have already made up your mind. The mayor keeps talking about when you vote to approve this rate that has been put on the agenda. So the rate may have decreased for the past few years. But just for everybody who is new here and everybody who's watching at home and everyone who doesn't understand how the tax works when it comes to property taxes, you may have reduced the tax rate, but the tax levy, which is the bill that citizens get, has gone up because the property valuations have increased. Every single one of you up here has an equal vote. It doesn't matter if you're at large or if you're a district council person. You don't vote for the tax rate in your own individual districts. Advocating for your city, your districts, if you're not advocating for the entire city and the safety of everyone in the city, you're not advocating for anyone but yourself. Projects need to benefit all of us because our taxes and fees go to pay for every project in the city. Y'all vote for the entire city and the money is diverted to District 4. It's not available for the other 3 districts. When money is spent on non-priorities because a council member ran on it, tax money is not available for necessities. These topics came up during recent town halls. This is the tax money for every citizen, not just a preferred few. I don't know why that's so difficult to understand, but I'll go ahead and let the council and the mayor have their last say. Try to discredit what I've said. I'll bring the receipts because I know y'all have to have the last word and say something after me. Go ahead.
Thank you for those kind words. Mr. Donald?
Testing, testing.
We got you. Mr. Baker, Mr. Baker, Mr. Baker.
Testing.
We hear you, Councilwoman Cobb. Thank you. Mr. Cagle.
Yes, ma'am. I guess you need to address some of that.
Oh, please.
Well, yes, the city plans on spending $271 million, but it was clear in the budget that we were not deficit spending. City revenue is made up of much more than just property taxes. There's water and sewer fees, there's fines, there's forfeitures. And just to continue on that individual's comments, one example is the golf course and the airports don't run on tax dollars. They run on user fees. So the people that are using those facilities pay for them. That's why we have them in an enterprise fund, just like the water and sewer department runs on its fees. So we are not spending $270 million versus $70 million of revenue. I'm not sure if you could help me out on some of the other, well, you know, I can't address the capital budget in Featherline and Tremere. Tremere is not in the budget. It's been listed for years as an unfunded project. I believe that was probably on the books before I even got here. Yes, we probably should have gone ahead and listed Featherline and Mohawk as well on the unfunded list. We're working right now on a temporary right turn lane. We're looking at ways that we can possibly do that with city staff. You don't want to do a permanent right turn lane because it's going to get torn up in a few years. But we think we can possibly do one with city staff, and we issued the engineering contract on that some time ago. But no, there's no construction money in the budget for that project. If there was another one, anyone?
Council, do y'all remember some of these questions, comments? Anybody else before Mr. Cagle is done? Okay, Council Mayor Pro Tem have a question for you, Mr. Cagle.
So, Mr. Cagle, when we are looking at, is it a true statement that inflation, as it skyrockets, municipalities across Texas are having to consider ways in which to balance their budget?
Yeah, our inflation over the past couple of years has been significant, and it's been far greater in construction inflation, and the basket of goods and services that the city purchases is not the same that an individual purchases. Most individuals don't purchase much asphalt, concrete, things like that, steel, and those have gone up at extreme double-digit rates. So I don't believe our budget has been greater than the rate of inflation. I've done a lot of work going back and looking over past several years at individual tax bills, and I would say we've been over the past 5 years less than the rate of inflation. And I can tell you that I did the analysis before I applied for this job and looked at 10 years worth of data. And when you look at the city of Killeen spending on a per capita basis and adjusted for inflation, it's been flat or lower than flat. Tax levy's gone up, but a lot of that has to do with new construction as well. New people that move in don't just disappear and not drive on the streets, use the parks, use the libraries, call 911. All those new people require new resources. And along that line, I think it's important for people to understand that the state of Texas is developer friendly. We can't just shut the door and say there's not going to be any development. The only way we can do that's on a temporary basis, and you have to have a specific reason. You can think of one, I believe, Dripping Springs, their sewer plant couldn't take any more. They couldn't handle anymore. We're not in that position. The only thing we could do would be very temporary for a very specific purpose. I've not run across one of those purposes yet. So you cannot indefinitely stop someone from developing their property. We don't have the ability to do that. We can help guide the development. We can suggest it. We put rules into place about how they're going to develop and build, but at the end of the day, we can't stop that. Lastly, I guess of no money being spent in South Killeen, we are building a new fire station, a new emergency operations center, significant development. We have spent over $3 million on engineering for Chaparral Road, and that's just getting the preliminary engineering done. It's a 7-mile road. It's probably a $100 million project that we're working on. You can't make it happen overnight.
So despite the challenges, Mr. Cagle, of historic rates of inflation, severe labor shortages, all the challenges that we have, understanding that we do have a lot of important priorities, whether it be safety, just in general, there's several. There are some cities that don't have balanced budgets or have not had them in years. Is this going to put us in a position that is favorable for the city of Killeen overall?
I think it balances some interests. Obviously, you've heard people, every district can have people that say, there's something I want that didn't get funded.
That's right. Yep.
You do your best to balance that, but that's all I could say is we're doing the best that we have. Some people argue we're not spending enough. Some argue that we're spending too much. You're not going to make everybody happy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Drake, Mrs. Tangerlin, and your staff. Thank you all for everything you do for the city. I know it's kind of very hard, the time and effort that you put into this to bring, and our budget has to be balanced, but to really work with our executive directors hours and hours into this and to hear and get it ripped apart as if you did not put any thought into it. And you have the education's degrees behind your name, that you're the experts in this field. And I apologize. This is an ongoing process since just ripped the budget apart and the people that put it together. And since I've been on here since 2017. And it's unfortunate that the image that we hear quite often about the city and funds is not a true statement. And this to the residents that listen, and this have always been my saying, and it always will be until I leave this council. I just foresee the future of me constantly saying this. Because somebody said it, it does not make it true. I listen to everyone's opinion. I can sit here and I can say agree to disagree. That's what residents do. But to blatantly say that no thought and effort was put into this budget is not true. I mean, if you call an executive director or see them in the field or see them at a store and ask them how much time and thought each department put in to this budget, and Mr. Cagle and our assistant city manager go through it and scrub it, wanted to make sure that we utilize the funds, taxpayers' money, to the best of our ability. No one wants taxes raised. I don't want that. Nobody want an increase in fees. But the $10 maintenance fee that we did do an increase in, you can see it throughout the city of Killeen. So we are putting money in all parts of the city. So I want to thank you on behalf of this council, and I truly apologize to you and your team for the stuff you have to hear. I do. Thank you for your hard work. With that being said, the open meeting is now closed. Public hearing is now closed. And on this item, council, there is no action at this time on that one. Now we can move on to, Madam Secretary, the next item.
OR 24010. Consider an ordinance adopting the annual budget for the City of Killeen for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024, and ending September 30th, 2025. The caption of the ordinance reads, "An ordinance approving and adopting a budget for operating the municipal government of the City of Killeen for the fiscal year beginning on October 1st, 2024, and ending on September 30th, 2025, appropriating money for the various funds and purposes of such budget, including appropriations of money to pay interest and principal sinking fund requirements on all indebtedness, providing a savings and severability clause, repealing all ordinances and appropriations in conflict with the provisions of this ordinance, and establishing an effective date."
Mrs. Drake, welcome back, and Mayor Pro Tem, Councilwoman Cobb, in order to vote on this item, we have to be able to hear your yes. I just want to make sure you can check your volume now. Mrs. Drake, welcome back. Oh, thank you. Council, would you like for to make the presentation again? All right. So can we get a motion to approve OR-24-010? Councilmember Boyd. Oh. Madam Secretary, would you please call for a record vote?
Madam Mayor,
we gotta make the
a
motion.
motion and a second has to be made
Second.
first.
Mayor Pro Tem? We already got a motion.
A second.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor, who made the motion?
Councilmember, who? What did you say?
She was asking
Councilmember
who-
Boyd.
No, not
So, Madam Mayor, I need to vocalize that motion.
Please do.
Okay, make a motion to, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure there is not specific language for this motion, is that correct?
No, sir. I thought she heard you. Yeah. No, sir. It's no specific language. It's just a motion.
Sorry about that. I make a motion to approve OR-24-010.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Alvarez? Councilmember Cobb?
Yes.
You're not Cobb.
Councilmember-
Councilmember Cobb. Councilmember Cobb, is that a yes? Oh, my God. Is that a yes?
She has to say it.
She in a restaurant trying to get, okay,
I will come back to her.
thank you. She in a restaurant trying to get a signal.
Councilmember Solomon?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sagara?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyd?
Yes.
Councilmember Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Cobb, I'm coming back to you.
Councilmember Cobb, can you hear us? Councilmember, can you hear us? Okay, well, we have to pass because we have to be able to hear her say yes. So with that being said, the motion carries 6-0 with Councilwoman Cobb being on Zoom and not being able to hear her vote. Madam Secretary, whenever you're ready.
RS 24-159, consider a memorandum resolution ratifying the property tax revenue increase reflected in the annual budget for the fiscal year October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Council, Mrs. Drake went through this last. Would you like for her to go back through it? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve RS-24-159? Councilmember Alvarez.
This one does have specific language, correct?
No, sir.
No. Okay, well, in that case, I move to approve RS 24-159 as presented.
Councilmember Solomon.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Okay, we got some concerns. Can we put up the vote? Because we can't hear Councilwoman Cobb. The motion passed 6-0 with Councilmember Cobb not being able to vote because she's on Zoom and we cannot hear her. Madam Secretary.
OR 24011, consider an ordinance setting a tax rate of .6573 per $100 valuation comprised of .5107 for maintenance and operations and .1466 for debt service for fiscal year 2025, tax year 2024. The caption of the ordinance reads, an ordinance setting the tax rate and levying a tax upon all property subject to taxation within the city limits of the city of Killeen, Texas for the 2024 tax year and for the use and support of the municipal government of the city of Killeen for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025. Apportioning said levy among the various funds and items for which revenue must be raised, including providing a sinking fund for the retirement of the bonded debt of the city and establishing an effective date. And a record vote must be taken.
Yes, ma'am. I got it. Madam Mrs. Drake has spoken. Council, would you like for her to go back over the slides? No. All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, can I get a motion?
So yes, ma'am, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of the tax rate of 0.6573, which is effectively a 9.62% increase in the tax rate.
Councilmember Solomon.
Second.
Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Alvarez,
Yes.
Councilmember Solomon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Sagara,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyd,
Yes.
Councilmember Adams,
Yes.
Councilmember Cobb. Councilmember Cobb. Francisco, she still on? All right. Let the record show, the motion carries 6-0 with Councilmember Cobb being on Zoom, and she could not vote because we cannot hear her. Madam Secretary.
RS 24160, consider a memorandum resolution to adopt the 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal year 2025 through 2029.
Thank you. Council, Mrs. Drake have gone through the slides. Would you like for her to go back through them? Councilmember Boyd, can I get a motion to approve?
Absolutely. Make a motion to approve RS-24-160.
Councilmember Alvarez,
Mayor, I'll second that.
all in favor, yes, all opposed, no? Councilmember Cobb, can we hear you? Can we even do that? I don't think so. To see, oh, did we vote? All in favor, yes, all opposed, no. Okay, council, please raise your hand, something is going on with that. Okay, there you go. Motion carries 6-0 with Councilmember Cobb being at the meeting on Zoom. She could not vote because we could not hear her answer. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Solomon.
Madam Mayor, make a motion to adjourn.
Councilmember Boyd.
Second.
All in favor, yes, all opposed, no.
No.
Who said no? You stay here. Meeting adjourned.